Hey, good morning. Normally I say good morning, good evening, good night, good, all of that, but it is currently 3:24 a.m. and I'm up recording what you see as the mom episode if you read the ticker down here at the bottom, aka Pam's son. For everybody who knows me, I've always been Pam's son. I go to Toledo, I have my name, but people recognize me as Pam's son. I go to San Pedro, Compton, Carson, Texas, Florida, parts of Michigan, Indiana, Chicago, Orlando, Washington, Oregon, and I'm Pam's son. And it's very important to me because it shows the impact of the woman that my mother is. For watching this right now, my mother is beginning to transition home to glory, or what appears to be her transition home to glory. And I was having some difficulty sleeping. So I got up, pulled out a light, pulled out a mic, pulled out the streaming tools, and am doing what I do to kind of provide not just a release for myself, but an opportunity for people to hear the things that I've always said, which is the greatness of the woman that is my mother. Speaking present tense because she's still here. When this releases, I don't know. But as of now, she's still here, and I want to eulogize her for myself. And even after this gets played, if she's no longer with us, these are just some of the thoughts I had on the greatest woman I've ever met. So I call this the mom episode because I think I talk a lot about fathers and the importance of fathers. And I've had an amazing one. And in this time, I think a lot of people have been able to sit back and see not just kind of the stand up man that my father was, coming into a relationship and taking on two children and raising them as his own. And, my mother not seeing a bill since around like 1998. Uh, and, seeing a man who didn't just pay the bills, provided, but gave the time. My family saw that for 30 plus years they were together. Now, in this moment, what they're really seeing is what me and my sister do. He's a really solid husband, that he's an honorable man, that even when, moments where I wasn't able to make my periodic 3 week trips to their home to help out, even, when my mother was in better health, moments where, one of my favorite cousins wasn't able to kind of stop in on his trips. Artie would make sure he got by there to not just ensure she was good, but check on my dad's mental health. Moments where my cousin Linda couldn't absolutely get down there. All of these times, he was there, making sure, cutting hours of his job that he was working so he could pay off the house because he didn't want her to have any worries. Just old school man. He was there, giving her baths, trying to keep the house clean the best he could, and he's been there every step of the way for 30 years. I'm glad my family is able to see him in this moment to be the honorable husband that he's been. And he's done it for a woman that's, to say she's deserving is an understatement. I don't really post a lot of direct family related stuff on social media. I didn't want to scare family and do the obligatory online post where everybody panics and freaks out. Oh my gosh, what's going on? No, I just wanted to do exactly what I've done, which is when a number comes up on my phone that I don't know, I answer it because I know for the past couple of days, if people can't get a hold of my sister at that moment, if they're not answering my mom's phone, they find somebody who has my number. And then that person passes it, and that person passes it, and that person passes it. So I've seen all these area codes from all these different states, from people who moved to different countries. And in all of these calls, they've all been the exact same thing. People who my mother brought to Christ, people who my mother kept out of prison, people who my mother helped. As I joked with her, joked with her a couple days ago and said, I know people who you've kept from the penitentiary and some that you pushed to the pulpit. And those people have called. At my mother's house the past couple of days has been an assortment of hustlers, cops, school vice presidents, lawyers, social workers, felons, Muslims, atheists, Christians. My cousin says we're family of collectors. I look at who my mother's collected over the years. The really cool Jewish friends of hers who's called, you know, the Muslims, the atheists, the agnostics, the Kojics, the Baptist, the white, the black, the Filipino, the German, the Mexicans, the Mexicans. My mother was heavily entrenched in social and legal work for the cities of San Pedro, the Harbor Gateway, Compton, Long Beach, LA, lunches with Maxine Waters, dinners with mayors ranging from Antonio Vergosa to Eric Garcetti when he was on the city level, police chiefs, lieutenants. I realize all of these people or their designated representatives are calling and reaching out and saying things and seeing about it. That family call from overseas and reach out overseas military, behind the walls, prison. And even as she shares words with us, I look around the hospice bed and I see just this motley crew, this collection of people, all brought together for one person. And it brings me a lot of peace knowing that, like, I talk a lot about legacy. What do you want to build? What do you really want to leave here? And I talk about it just because I've always wanted to pursue helping people, not putting all people first, but really just make sure people were good, making sure that when people weren't here, not that their name carried, not that they had a bunch of money, but that their words and their actions, bro, that they meant something. And I've always known, but even in this moment speaking, I do that because of my mom. I do that because of Pam. I do community work and donate and volunteer time and give to the homeless. And anytime some organization pops up at work, we're going to go read to kids. I think of every night my mother read to us. I think of Story Mouse. I think me reading to my kids when they were younger. I think of me reading to my youngest daughter now. So whenever they say, hey, let's go volunteer, they call me. I get the email. Hey, can you help organize a group of people to read? Yeah, absolutely. When they want to go do something for homeless people, or when I want to round up money to donate to some random organization that no one knows about. I think of the things my mother did in cities where somebody had some startup nonprofit or some small soup kitchen, or were serving the homeless out of their garage, or were trying to keep people from getting evicted. And she would look at that small organization, that one person, and say, that's where the work is. And I guess that's why I do what I do, or I try to. I always said my goal in life is to put my children in a position where they're better off than I was. Not listen to the stories of all of my mother's family, both the blood kin and, people like my uncle Leonard, Leonard Gregory, who's been close friends with my mom's older brothers. But even though he was friends with my mom's older brothers, he just became really close with my mom and the brother right above her, my uncle Glenn, and he just has always been around. I look at my Aunt Myra, one of her closest confidants. We were in San Pedro. We grew from like a co-worker to them going to Toyota and them really being in the trenches with work in San Pedro and Wilmington and Long Beach, Compton, and fighting against the foolishness of slumlords and illegal actions against first generation immigrants and the work they did with mayors and city councils. And, my Aunt Myra, Mexican Filipino, sitting up, stomping feet down for the National Council of Negro Women. And in my mother, she saw, let me do it, color wasn't it. She really has always seen a sister. I look at other family like my Aunt Pauline, a woman who we collected and so tied with my mom that when she was first announced with ovarian cancer, Pauline jumped in her little car and drove across the country from California to Indiana to be with her. About 2 weeks, she just stayed there by my mom's side. Anything that needed to be cleaned, cooked, prep, Pauline did because we're collectors and because we're people of service. It's almost like we surround ourselves with other people of service, so nobody ever gets too much weight on them. I realized moving around the house, trying to be strong for my sister, trying to be strong for my father. I always would joke around, you know, if it were an event and something need to be cleaned up, my mother would wash dishes at like a funeral repast. She would be trying to take out the trash at a baby shower. She was just always of service. And last night, you know, a couple hours ago, I'm trying to figure out who's sleeping where and what needs to get done. And my sister Mo goes, "Bro, I got it. You've got to take some time for yourself." And this is the time I take because I'm not a sob story on social media person. I'm not the extra hard tough guy. I'll have my moments, but in this time, I just want to be. Yeah, I kind of just ended up being the epitome of Pam. I just want to make sure everyone else is good. So for a woman that served a community, a multitude of communities, for a woman that brought people to church, for a woman that brought people to Christ, for a woman that after a failed marriage and rough relationship never let the streets or that affect her. One of the greatest pictures I have is of my grandmother's 70th birthday. It's her and my grandpa Lee sitting at the table. I'm talking to my aunt Shauna, and I come back to the table, and it's my dad, pops, my dad, my mom. We're all at the table together. Mind you, my father and my dad, for the people who know, they're both longshoremen. And I always say, I joke with my mom, and I would always tell her, "You ain't never been with no dude who broke." You done been with longshoremen and dudes who had like you done been with two men in my life. One was a longshoreman getting money, and the other one was a business owner getting money who transitioned to a longshoreman getting money. I said you didn't like broke dudes. That was your thing. But yeah, these two men ran into each other across the job for 20 plus years. It was never a fist fight. It was never an argument. And even at that table in that moment, as my grandmother would come around and introduce people, so this is my son Gus. This is my daughter Pam. This is my son Victor. And then they all would just laugh at the dynamic. I took a picture of them at the table laughing. And I remember speaking with my ex-wife, and she asked me a question. She said, "How did they get along?" And to this day, that question still like it doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't shock me. But in that moment, I was confused because I'd only grown up in a house where my the man who raised me never said anything ill about the man who birthed me. The man who birthed me never said anything ill about the man who was raising us. They got along cordially on the job, away from the job. To this day, no issues. And I always knew it was because both of them had grown. They were men. They tried not to get involved in the foolishness. At the same time, it was out of respect for a woman who just wasn't going to allow it. A woman who always wanted respect, who demanded respect, who commanded your attention, who when she walked in a room, you may not have necessarily noticed her, but a woman who, once her presence was felt, you knew who she was. So I'm grateful to have had the greatest mother possible. A librarian, a confidant, a friend, an amazing grandmother, a teacher, a woman who, anytime I had issues at Dana, Barton Hill, whatever school I was at, putting hands on people, had no issue coming to school and engaging with the administration at the institution from primary through high school and telling them what it was going to be. She never rode with me always. She rode with me when I was right, but my mother was always a person who picked a side of right. Never just picked a side because it was convenient for her. That was her life. That was her work. That was everything she did. She always rode the side of right. So I've been blessed, extremely blessed, to have someone who was even killed, who was honest, who was loving, who was forthcoming, who kept it real at all times. Someone who in the last 3 years I had a dream and God showed me go and invest time in this woman. So for the last 3 years, I'm super super grateful to my soon to be wife. So grateful to Tremaine. My mother got sick. I had a chance to full on opportunity to go to a couple police departments in Atlanta. There I had to go work somewhere in Delta. And she said, if you take the job, she said, it's an easy decision. She said, baby, you can take the job at Delta and take your mom to every treatment. I took the pay cut. I took less money. My cousin already put it in perspective. He said, you think you took less money? He said, but you didn't. He said, you had to think about it in that time. He said, what you thought was less money was more time. The less money was being able to give my dad a break when she was going chemo. The less money was being able to be there to be present when she wasn't having her best of days. The less money was being able to stop in on her, pull up for Bobby Keacock's birthday so that her and the family could all be together. The less money was hearing my mother since I was a kid talk about Paris and being able to put her in a first class lay down seat with champagne and eating croissants and snacks under the Eiffel Tower and sipping coffee, looking at Parisian streets and artwork. The less money was that time. So for the past 3 years, I've kind of built for understanding that she wouldn't be with me much longer. I just didn't know when. So I'm thankful because I was obedient to God. When He told me to go, I just went. I'm extremely grateful for that time that I invested. Because it was one thing to have memories as a kid where she did for me. But it's funny how life works out, that full cycle. My mother being this person of service for me, taking me here, doing this for me, and now arriving at a point where for the past 3 years, I've really been taking her, doing for her, paying this. And I laugh because anytime I took her to dinner, anytime I traveled with her somewhere, it really was paying it forward because she wasn't going to open that purse. I'm grateful for every phone call, for every email, for everyone that reached out. I'm grateful and I thank you. If you're watching, I want you to understand if she made an impact on your life, she was somebody who gave you her time. She was somebody who gave you her words, really the essence of herself, that service. You weren't a friend, you weren't a coworker, you were somebody who went to church with. You were family. You were family. We are all family set up by the foundational legacy laid by a woman named Pam. So I'm forever grateful for her. And as I head to sleep, or try to because it's 3 in the morning, just want her to understand that I love her. I always will, and that will never change. And it's like I told my sister, is the end of her for us. It's just the beginning for her. I'm excited knowing that my mother will hear those words that we all seek. Well done, thy good and faithful servant. Called her 2 weeks ago when my godmother was visiting. And I just asked her a simple question. I said, Mom, what do you want? What do you need me to do? What do you want? And she spoke real low on the phone. I'm listening. She said, I want you to follow Jesus. I leaned back and I kind of laughed, but it's always been her message. Follow Christ. Be good to people. Do good work. Help those around you. It's everything she embodied. Her favorite verse is Romans 12:1. That's who my mother was. She lived to be a sacrifice for the work of God. Her service to people, her service to Him, her service to her community. I'm forever grateful that God allowed me these years, all the years of my life and all the years of hers, that He loaned her to me, to us. And I thank all of you, hundreds upon hundreds of relatives from all over the globe who she's loved on and impacted and mentored and sowed into. Because we are all her legacy. We are all we are all somebody who she did something important for and who she wanted to go see be great. We are all many things. and Bam Son. I love you all. Peace.